r/AskReddit. Police officers of Reddit. What is your best I think we have the wrong person story? I remember when my son was 3 weeks old. It's 3 AM and I'm laying down on the couch. Baby is in his rocker. Suddenly there is loud knocking on my door followed by police. I thought for sure it was my friends coming back from the bar and they needed a place to crash. And they have done that police knock to me before. So I'm sitting there mad thinking, don't they know I just had a kid? Needless to say I didn't answer the door. Figured they could find somewhere else to crash. Next thing I know my door is kicked down. I grab baby and run towards the door and 4 or 5 police officers run in. They search my house with flashlights, scared the crap out of my sleeping husband. My 5-year-old didn't wake up though, lol. Turns out they had the wrong address. They apologized and a week later they installed a new door for me. But holy duck, that was scary. I'm impressed they replaced the door. My mom had this happen to her. The police broke the front door, ransacked the house, and ripped out the toilet. They were looking for a druggie who didn't live there anymore. Once they were finally satisfied that he wasn't there, they left. Never fixed a thing. I was a curious little kid. My father stopped at the local liquor store to grab a bottle of wine and I was poking around. The door to the office was unlocked and I wandered inside, sat in the chair and spun around a few times, got bored, wandered out. A few days later my father gets a call from the police, and we go in. As the officer is speaking to us I proceed to spun around in the chair and pick up and look at everything on his desk. After about a minute the officer says, "Thank you for coming in. I see what happened. You can go." Turned out the owner's teenage son stole a few grand from the store and tried to blame it on the handsy 5-year-old. Not a police officer, but one night around 8 PM my fiance received a call. "Officer Derek, we have your health card. Tell us your whereabouts right now." Fiance: "This isn't Derek." "Oh, you sound like Derek. Your buddies ratted you out and gave us your number. Now where are you?" "I'm not Derek and I'm not telling you where I am." "Who are you?" "Oh, this is Officer Smith. Stop messing around and tell us your location." Derek: "Again, Derek is not my name. How do I know you're a real officer?" "Oh, boy, if you don't tell me where you are, you're going to be in much more trouble. My badge number is blank." "Okay fine. I'm at home at blank. If you don't show up in a police car, I'm not coming out." He hung up the phone, dialed 911 cause we live in a bad area and wasn't sure if this was a fake call or not. Operator verifies that it was a correct badge number. The officer called back. He apparently misdialed by one number. He apologized, but still blamed my fiance because you were being very defensive and sounded guilty. Someone had stolen a car and I went to go check it out. I'm driving behind what I think is the car. It had the same color vehicle and same car and the mistake I made was not matching the license plates. I pulled them over, got out the car and realized it was my friend with his family. I reread the license plate and I noticed they were the same except for the last letter on the plate. The last letter on the stolen car was J. The last letter on my friend's was I. I laughed it off and apologized and we went out to dinner later that night. 2 of my colleagues, murder squad detectives, attended custody to meet a defendant answering bail. When they arrived at the custody desk there were a couple of people hanging around, waiting for their solicitors. They told the custody sergeant they were there for insert name, and he pointed one of the guys out. They went up and introduced themselves and said they would be questioning him at another station. So all 3 got in the car and headed off. Whilst driving, they told the defendant what would be happening. On arrival he would be arrested on suspicion of attempted murder, questioned and either bailed or remanded. The guy was like, "You've got to be joking. Attempt murder?" I was shoplifting. He was relatively calm, half laughing and shaking his head. A short time later one of the officers got a call from the custody sergeant. Their actual bail appointment had arrived. There were 2 defendants with the same name answering bail that day. They apologized to the non-murderous shoplifter, turned the car around and headed back to bring the right person in for questioning. Keystone Cops to the maximum. Obligatory not a cop, but one day I was on the way home and I noticed the police helicopter flying overhead. I lived in a big city at the time so I thought nothing of it until I was blocked in by 2 police officers. Someone in an SUV very similar to mine had been trying to lure children at a school nearby and was considered a dangerous offender due to previous convictions. They thought they had their guy, but all they had that day was a very pregnant and bewildered white girl in an SUV with her ice cream. The one officer came to my window with his hand on his gun and asked me if I knew anything about someone luring children in my Jeep that day, and I looked at him in bewilderment. I have a panic disorder. Hopefully that explains my reaction. And blurted out, I have 2 under 5 and 1 right here. What the duck do I want someone else's for? Luckily they let me go after telling me what to keep an eye out for. I can laugh about it now. Not an officer, but I live in a neighborhood in Indy that is going through a major revitalization right now. So it's very much in a transitional phase. We rent a house from a good friend of ours. He bought the house from some garbage people who had lived there for a long time. These people sold, made drugs. There was violence, prostitution, everything. In general the house was disgusting, unlivable, really, just the worst. Well, the scumbags who lived here still try to use our address even after 5 years. About a year and a half ago one of the dudes used our address to renew his driver's license at the BMV. He even had the audacity to leave a note for us to call him when the license came in. Fast forward a few months, around Christmas time, we are all sitting around, watching TV when we get a knock on the door. My husband answers it and it's a SWAT team with guns drawn. They see my husband, who does not look like a methed out crackhead, and inside are our 2 little boys, my parents, and me nursing our baby, plus the Christmas tree and all the lovely trappings of our home. They immediately put their guns down and my husband and I have a lovely chat with them. Yeah, they had our house surrounded, guns drawn, the whole shebang. Looking for this dude who was wanted on some kind of violent felony. We were pissed at this dude who I refer to as Big Nasty. I live in a small town in rural England, and we used to get some trainees, new police officers from the Met there for their training. Me and some of my friends were teenagers. We were walking to the supermarket, because what else is there to do in a small town pre-internet? Suddenly from out of nowhere this police car comes screaming out of nowhere, sirens going, and screeches to a halt in front of us. A young guy, must have only been about 5 years or so older than us, jumps out and starts giving us the whole hairdryer treatment. He lines us up and starts taking our statements of what we had been up to in the last hour, gloating at us. You lads are in trouble now. Criminal damage, trespass, theft. You have really screwed up. With him was the local Bobby, and he came up to each of us in turn after the younger guy had grilled us and said very jovially, "Now don't worry lads, I'm sure it's a misunderstanding. We've had some reports of a break-in. You don't match the preliminary description, and I'm sure we'll get this cleared up when we get the more detailed description come through." So the more detailed description comes through the radio and the young guy is wearing the biggest eating grin you've ever seen. The description didn't even remotely match, and honestly the young guy looked so disappointed we all ended up feeling sorry for him. So yeah, that was probably quite embarrassing for him. Not a police officer, but the person they talked to. I had just finished a cooking class and my husband was waiting for me. It was 9:30 at night and the parking for the class was in a back alley. Before we left, the officers turned on their lights and asked for identification and registration. They said, in their system, our plates were registered to a green vehicle, ours was white. They let us go on our way since the registration was all correct, but told us to talk to the DMV and get it cleared up. The next day I went to the DMV and they said that the only car with those plates was our current vehicle. Best we can figure is that we purchased this car in September and in August, our DMV had switched to a new computer system. So on the old system, was registered to our old vehicle. On the new system, they were registered to the new vehicle, and the police were still looking at the old system. This was in February, so 6 months after the switchover. I have to wonder how many other people they had incorrect vehicle information on. I am not a police officer, however I was the person detained, in handcuffs, by the police due to a bank robbery nearby. It took place in Brownsville, NY. I was driving a 2-door grey 89 feet Buick. I am a 5 feet 7 inches Caucasian male, BTW. This took place during the middle of a beautiful spring day. I mention this because there was no mistaking what I looked like. They held me for about an hour in the back of a police car. After they released me, they told me the bank footage showed the criminal was approximately a 6 feet 4 inches African American male driving a purple 4-door Chevy. No apologies, just told me to be on my way. I did not have a cell phone back in '91, so I went to the closest payphone and explained what happened to my boss, so they can call my next customer and explain why I will be late. I'd really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. Thanks for watching. Be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to be entered into our iMac giveaway.
her.